Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank both of the witnesses for appearing before the committee today, and I'd like to follow up on what my colleague, Mr. Hawley, touched on, which is the Indo-Pacific strategy. I feel very strongly that this is a part of the world we need to spend more attention on, and I have heard from both of you your emphasis on Indo-PACOM and our role and the importance of our role there. And while I applaud the department's messaging about prioritizing great power competition in this region over other activities, I do remain concerned that we've not matched our rhetoric with our actions. How are we able to divert some $7 billion to border wall construction, and yet we're not, and credibly say that the Pacific region is our main effort? And you know, Secretary Esper, I agree with you that IMED is certainly very important. In fact, I recently met with General Aparit Kosampong, who is the Thai Army leader, and he talked very fondly about all his time that he spent at U.S. Training facilities. And in fact, he said it was his joint experience training at U.S. facilities as that of General Andika from Indonesia that led them to form a friendship based on their experience in the U.S. that then led to this recent agreement they just signed 2 months ago on information sharing. But I think it takes more than IMED. I think you need to put some MILCON in this. I think we need to look at staffing and resources increasing for the Indo-PACOM in order to really deter Chinese aggression. So I'd love to hear from both of you as to when we're going to see more of a plus up in this region beyond just talking about how great this is.
Senator, I think first of all, you know, I agree with the importance of Indo-PACOM, and it's because it's number one in our strategy, to say the least. But if you look at the simple disposition of forces, Indo-PACOM has 5 times as many forces as any other theater, over 350,000. The next closest theater is 70,000. If you added up every other theater, Indo-PACOM would still be twice as big as all of them combined. So we have a lot of forces in the theater. I think the challenge isn't necessarily putting more forces in, it's making sure that we look at our disposition on the ground and think, how do we use them more effectively to grow partners and allies, and then how do we exercise with them, et cetera, et cetera. That's my quick assessment.
I don't disagree with you that it's not just about the number of troops that are on the ground. It's about resourcing Indo-PACOM so that they can go out. I think we need to be focused, you know, and you're already talking about this, more basing agreements.
Right.
I was very impressed with what was done in South Korea when we didn't have enough ammunition, and you guys took that out of Hyde and plussed them up. But this is the reason that you have more troops is because it's a larger geographic region than, say, CENTCOM is. Maybe AFRICOM would have a more geographic area, but the geography is different. General, you were going to say?
Well, you're exactly right. The geography is completely different. The politics are different. The international politics, the threats are different. The allies are different. All of that is different. You have to factor all of that in. But in terms of main effort versus supporting efforts and economy of force efforts, in the NDS, the Central Command area, AFRICOM and SOUTHCOM are all designated as economy of force, and you're familiar with that term from your military experience. And EUCOM is a supporting effort, and PACOM is, quote unquote, the main effort. It's all part of a globally integrated level of effort with all the resources that the Department of Defense has. With respect to Indo-PACOM, you know, the Secretary mentioned 350,000 troops. He's also got, 200 ships, 7 aircraft carriers. He's got 3 ARG-MUs. He's got 1,600 high-performance aircraft. This is a highly resourced, from a military standpoint, highly resourced theater. So it's not so much the numbers of the ships, planes, trains, and automobiles sort of thing. It's how we use it, where we put it, and what our broader strategy is with respect to what we think is going to be the most significant adversary for the next 100 years, which is China, and the rise of China, how we as a nation deal with that. Military is one aspect of a much broader strategy that we've got to come to grips with. But I do think that Indo-PACOM is well-resourced from a departmental standpoint in terms of military capability right now.
But the Chinese are really moving ahead of us when it comes to basing issues there, and we have to have more than a little toehold there in order to ensure freedom of navigation.
That's right. Access, basing, overflight, all that stuff plays into it.
So adjacent to this issue, I want to shift slightly to the other, if there is a bet on what questions I was going to ask you, I'm sure this is one of the ones that will come up, which is logistics. I'm deeply concerned about our ability to transport and sustain our forces overseas, especially in places like Indo-PACOM. Contested logistics is something I believe we need to pay far more attention to. This year's cuts to the tanker fleet and anemic investment in sea lift replacement and maintenance really worry me. Secretary Esper and General Milley, can you tell me how this year's defense budget request preserves or improves our ability to transport and sustain our forces in a contested environment? The days that we're going to be able to send ships full of what we need without our enemy trying to take those ship out are behind us.
Senator, you're exactly right. I don't know if you were here earlier, but I mentioned this. I'm concerned that two important things that often get overlooked because they're not sexy are things like airlift and aerial refueling and strategic sea lift. And, we've invested in 2 surge ships this year. But I've had a lot of conversations with General Lyons. We need to do more, and we need to do more soon. That's why we've talked a few times about the shipbuilding plan, but one of the things the shipbuilding plan doesn't incorporate is strategic lift, sea lift. So I sent a letter to the committees, and I said, when I look at the shipbuilding plan, I think we should factor in strategic sea lift because it also competes for budget dollars, and it's a critical factor. So between that, I'm very concerned about the delays in the KC-46. I had the chance to crawl through one about 2 weeks ago and look at the problems. So we're going to have to look at restoring maybe some 10s, some 135s, so we keep that at least a 479 aircraft going. But it's a very capable airplane. It's just going to take some time. But those are critical things, particularly when you see the distances from CONUS or Alaska all the way into theater, into Indo-Pacific theater. And then forward basing is another way you offset that, of course.
Yeah, and you're right, because it's not just about the sea lift, it's the tanker fleet, as you're mentioning, but it's also fueling.
Yes, ma'am.
We've got to have forward fueling capability. We can't just be shipping our fuel there for every, thing that sucks gas, right?
That's right.
And you're right. We're over time, so I can get you an answer for the record. But
Thank you, John.
You're absolutely right to be concerned about the maritime sea lift. We've given that up as a nation for the most part over the last many years, in the tanker fleet and the airlift fleet. On the tankers, though, I just want to be clear again. We've got almost 500 tankers. So in this budget, there's 10 KC-10s and 13 KC-135s. Yes, there's stress on the force. No question about it. You've heard from General Lyons and others. But at the same time, I don't want people who are watching this, especially in certain countries, to think that the United States of America cannot project power overseas when needed. We can, and we will if required.
Thank you.